Hello and welcome to the Pre-Chiro podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Ben Glass, and today we're making a professional chiropractor connection out in Croatia with Dr. John Demartini. Dr. John, can you get us started by just introducing yourself and reflecting on that moment in life where you decided you wanted to become a chiropractor? Where were you? What were you up to? What attracted you to this path?
Gosh. Right now, I'm Dr. John Demartini. I am in Hvar, Croatia, on my ship. We're sailing. I'm anchored right outside Hvar. I am. I became a chiropractor. Decided to be a chiropractor after reading the Chiropractic Story, a book by Marcus Bach, who where I was reading it was in Peru at Machu Picchu, at one of the Inca ruins there. And I pulled it out early in the morning and I read it and I got tears in my eyes because it had the philosophy that resonated with me. And I knew after reading that book that that was the path. I was pre-med in school. I was in the honor society. The doctor who was running the class just assumed I was going into medicine, even though I knew I didn't want to go to medicine. I had considered naturopathy. I had considered chiropractic, osteopathy, but I hadn't considered medicine because I just didn't believe that there was an excess of drug and a deficiency of drugs and excess of organs in the body. I really believe that the power that made the body is what healed the body. So I philosophically fell in love with the principles in this book. And then when I came back to America from Peru, I found out where the chiropractic college, it happened to be right nearby where I was. And so I went to Texas Chiropractic College. They accepted me and I became a chiropractor because of that. My dad and mom were going to a chiropractor. I had visited and seen chiropractor, but I really didn't put two and two together until I read that book, and the philosophy of it inspired me because I really believe that the power to heal is from within. Our capacity to heal is not so much an external system as much as it is an internal system.
And can you describe the perceptions that you had of the world around you? You said that you were pre-med and maybe just some of how your upbringing shaped your views and the way that you were going in life, the direction you were going in life, and maybe what it was about the philosophy of chiropractic that resonated so much, and maybe also touch on when you made that pivot and you decided to go to Texas Chiropractic College, what your experiences were like, any challenges you had to overcome, any surprises you encountered as you crossed over to this identity of becoming a chiropractic student?
Well, when I was 17 years old, I had a health issue. I nearly died. And that led me to a health food store, which led me to a yoga class, which led me to meet Paul Bragg, the guy that has the Bragg's amino acids and Bragg's nutritional things, products. And in one night, 1 hour with one message, this man inspired me to do what I'm doing. I wanted to be involved in teaching. I wanted to travel the world. I want to be involved in healing. I want to be a doc. And so I had considered naturopathic because he was a naturopath. I'd considered chiropractic. I'd considered osteopathy. I knew I wanted to be in the healing arts. I considered medicine, but I just didn't feel that was, I didn't want to dispense drugs and I didn't want to take out organs and things. I just thought that there's something more powerful. I'd rather awaken inside the body its own capacities. And I'd have to say that it was the Chiropractic Story, the book, that made sense to me philosophically. I'd been studying philosophy, classical philosophy, and the studies of universal intelligence and the studies of the laws of the universe and things, and many different philosophers. But when I read that book, it just rang true for me. And so when I came back from that summer, I was gone that summer, I went and found out about the chiropractic college. And it was literally not that far from where I was. And my transcripts were excellent. Even though I was pre-med, I knew I wasn't going into medicine, but I went pre-med because that was the only path where you study philosophy, physiology, the prerequisites for health. And I remember when I came back and I told Dr. Kaminsky, who was the head of that pre-med honor society that I was one of the top students in, she said, Dr. Demartini, or John at the time, where do you want to go to medical school? And I said, I'm not going to medical school. I'm going to be a chiropractor. And she was offended by it. She said, a man of such brightness, you want to do that? Why would you want to waste your time on that? And I knew then I had made the right decision. I knew the way she responded. I just knew that perfect. She just confirmed that that was a bit not what I wanted, what she was doing. And she says, well, I can't give you a recommendation for that. And I said, well, that's fine. I'm not asking for your recommendation. And everybody wanted her recommendation because it got them into schools. But I didn't care about a recommendation. I got Dr. Cox, who is a biochemist, and another chiropractor to give me recommendations. And I got into chiropractic college. I didn't know where I fit as far as academically in the school at first, until you start taking tests and see where you position yourself. You don't even know where you are. But it was a short period of time I felt comfortable being one of the more, I guess you could say, assertively learning students. And I started to apply everything I could from what I was getting in the classes. Instead of going and taking a coffee break, I haven't drank with 3 cups of coffee my whole life. I didn't take breaks. I just would run up to the front at a table and start practicing whatever I learned. And I just figured I would use every hour and every minute I have to just keep developing my skills and my knowledge in this area. And so I started sneaking over to the clinic, even my first year in chiropractic college, and in the gynecology room, which is never being used, I started seeing patients. I was not supposed to, but I was dating a girl who was in the 3rd year, who was interning, and I had developed some skills that she didn't have, and she was sending me her patients, and we were working together on these patients. And I just cared about trying to get to what I can to master my skill. That's all I wanted to do, is just master skill. And then I realized when I was in school, I was curious about my education relative to medicine. So I went over to Baylor Medical School, and I didn't sign up or enroll. I just went through the classes, and I actually took tests, and I end up at the top of the class there. And I wanted to know, is the education I'm getting any different than what they're getting? And it was the same book, same kind of class, same type of test. It was no different. The same things were going on in the school, except you're paying for that school. It didn't really start to differentiate till around the 3rd and 4th year when they started doing more internship. Then you started seeing a philosophy change from an internal to more of an external, a false causality attribution bias system that's going towards, something out there doing this to you. And you're now going to be the hero that solves it to the bad bug or the bad this or something, toxins or whatever. And I always said that the body has the capacity to manage these things if given the opportunity to live wisely and to, feed it wisely and function wisely. And I wanted to know, since the nervous system was the major organizer, when you stop and think about it, out of all the things you could ever study in the universe, there's nothing more magnificent than the human brain and the nervous system. It's the most intricate, most puzzling mystery known. And then out of that, its impact on physiology through the nervous system and its impact on the mental impulse and the biological impulse to cause signals to the cells to help coordinate the cells, even down to epigenetically impacting, the expression through neurotransmitters, the cells and the genes. The nervous system was the key. So I thought, here I am getting to specialize in the most significant thing known in the universe, working with the most highly protected structure known in the body, because it protects it with spines and skulls and things, because it knows that's the most vital organ, that and the heart. And here I am getting to specialize in the most important system on the planet, and to be able to learn and master the relationship between how the nervous system mediates pretty well everything from perceptions to actions, and how it functions, to me was like the highlight of study. And and then I realized that I didn't want to take the standard. If I went by what the standard in the school was, I would be average. So I took whatever expectations I had and I tenfolded it. So if they said, here's your textbook, I'd read 10 textbooks. If they said, here's how many clinic hours you need, I'd 10 times it. Whatever they did, I multiplied it times 10 and made that my standard, because I didn't want to be average. I wanted to be, beyond average. And I'm very grateful that the school itself gave me the foundation, but my own initiative and my desire to want to learn and my philosophical background, I think, gave me even more advantage. And I met some amazing people who have impacted my life even to this day. And I've gotten to do amazing things as a result of it. And I saw some really amazing, almost miraculous transformations in people's lives because of adjusting spines.
Yeah, you used to say adjusting spines and minds with the divine, and I'm just wondering if you can continue with this sort of narrative arc of how you transformed into a chiropractor and the life you were able to lead right out of school, and maybe the path that you took. And inherent in a lot of your story you just shared right there is going beyond the boundaries or the structure that's been created by the educational institutions that students are often in. I'm also just wondering if you can touch on, if you're talking to a college student today or a high school student today, and whether they go to the chiropractic path or they don't go to the chiropractic path, maybe just how to approach the process of clarifying their vision for themselves, of clarifying their own unique, authentic path.
Well, many people go through life and they compare themselves to others instead of compare their daily actions to what they dream about. And if you compare yourself to others and put people up on pedestals, you'll inject their values and cloud the clarity of your own mission. And if you look down on people and project your values onto them, you'll expect them to live in your values, which will be futile. Both of those are futile paths, and both will create symptomatology to get you back to authenticity. Because when you look up to people, you'll minimize yourself. If you look down on people, you'll exaggerate yourself. And if you're exaggerating and minimizing yourself, you're not being yourself. So you're trying to get others to live in your values, or you're trying to live in other people's values, and you're being second at being somebody else instead of first at being you. So I'm a firm believer of being honest about what your life demonstrates that you spontaneously do, and give yourself permission to create your version of what chiropractic is about. You know, when I was in internship in chiropractic college, I saw a whole lot of doctors, probably 40 doctors during that time. Some were the ones scheduled, some of the ones I just wanted to go meet. And I learned from every one of them, some things I wouldn't want to do, some things I would want to do. And I then realized that I wasn't going to work for anybody because I didn't really fit into any one of their particular models. I had my own model that I wanted to do. And it's not that I didn't want to have mentorship. It's just that I didn't want to limit it to just any one mentor. And I got out, I graduated. I saw a vision of where I wanted to go. I got me an office there and opened up. And I didn't know what I really was doing business-wise. I just knew I was committed to clinically helping people. I felt competent in, enough to be able to go start my practice. But I just kept asking myself what worked and what didn't work today, and I kept an inventory of it. And I at age 27, about a month, not even a month after I opened up my practice, about 3 weeks actually, 2 weeks, I went to a bookstore in Walden's bookstores, and I went and got a book called The Time Trap by Alec McKinsey. And after reading that book, I realized that I was going to hold myself back if I did everything. I needed to organize my time and usage of my resources. So I made a list of everything I was doing in a day. Then next to that list, and that was exhaustive. That was 9-page list. Then I wrote down next to it, what does it produce per hour? And then I reprioritized it based on what was most productive to least productive. And the most productive thing was me sharing a message with people about chiropractic, because I could engage new people and to become patients. And that was more effective than even me being in a cubicle. The second most significant thing was to adjust. The third thing was basically engaging people in the report of findings. And the fourth was basically inspiring my teams to do what they were designed to do, and the doctors that I eventually hired. The third column was, how much meaning does it have? I want to find out what's most meaningful to me and what is most productive. Because what is productive, it means it's serving the clients. And I want to find out what served the clients most and they'd be willing to pay for. But what was inspiring to me? And what was inspiring to me is teaching and inspiring people on the message of chiropractic, and then also clinically adjusting. I didn't like doing administrative. I didn't like doing reports. I didn't like doing that stuff. I just loved to share the message and adjust. Then I looked at what would it cost to hire somebody to delegate some of these other activities. Because anytime you do low priority things, you devalue yourself, and so is the world. And anytime you do things that are high, you value yourself, and so is the world. So I realized if I wanted people to value what I'm doing, I have to do what's highest in my values and what's most meaningful. And so I went through and looked at what was the cost of hiring somebody and what was the spread between what it could produce versus what it would cost. So I could then prioritize what was the most important things to delegate in the sequence of delegation. And then I looked at how much time was spent on each of these things. And then I finally prioritized the whole thing. And then I gradually hired people to take over things. So I opened up my practice in a 970 square foot office with one assistant. And 18 months later, I had 5 doctors, 12 staff members, a 5,000 square foot office. And I had served way more people. I was getting 100 new patients a month. And I was way more income generating. And I was reaching people. And by then I had my own TV show. I was talking about health on TV. I had radio shows. I was starting to publish books out on health. I was getting out there because the more people you meet and greet, the more you treat. So I figured, how do I leverage myself? And speaking was the most significant leveraging thing I could do. So I just consistently shared the message. I mean, every opportunity, I did not go to bed at night unless I met new people. That was just a basic commitment every day. And I leveraged myself into growing a practice. And then people wanted to know what I was doing and how they're doing it. And Parker Seminars asked me to come and speak. And I started speaking there. And for nearly 39 years, I spoke at Parker. And up until 3 years ago, up until COVID. And but I just kept growing. I kept wanting to do it. Then I realized that I was doing more for the profession by not being in my cubicle, but by actually helping other doctors grow their practice. So I was keeping records of how many increasing numbers of patients I can get all the doctors, because I consider them all working for me. If I can help them grow their practice, all those patients are partially mine, the people I'm touching. So I was we got up to 3 million people in a year we were seeing as a result of, leveraging training other doctors. And I felt that was, my contribution in chiropractic. And to this day, I still do that. I'm still working with chiropractors in various countries around the world as I travel.
I'm wondering if you could touch on the core essence of what it is that you're able to do to help chiropractors break through some of their limiting beliefs or some of the limitations that they have in their skill sets, maybe what you focus their mind on, what you prioritize for them to work on. Maybe this could be relevant and helpful for students just starting chiropractic school, maybe students just graduating and beginning their first practices. But ultimately, this question is tied into the skill sets and really how do you work with people and help them transform and break through their experiences?
Well, if you practice something and refine it and polish it and become great at it, where it goes on automatic pilot, you don't have to think about it. It's just a spontaneity. And you do it with flair. I used to teach doctors when I did consulting for about 1,000 clinics in the 80s. And I would teach doctors that if I had a doctor one time, I walked in his office and he was adjusting and he had an open room concept. And nobody was watching him. And I took him at lunch. I said, can I share with you something that will make a difference in your marketing and your referrals and in your results? He said, certainly. I said, let's develop a style and a flair when you adjust so people cannot sit there without watching you. They have to watch you because people are not paying attention. They're reading pamphlets and they're doing something. They're not even paying attention to you while you're working, which is a sign you're not really present, because when you're present, they become present. So I trained him on how to deliver an adjustment with a style and flair that you could not watch. And that transformed his practice. I mean, transformed his practice, because now he was doing less and getting more impact. And brevity is brilliance, simplicity is supreme, and less is more. And it's little actions that make the biggest impact. And he prioritized his adjustments. We looked at all the adjustments he was doing. We prioritized what was most common, and we made him master those particular adjustments. And he drew clients that needed that. Whatever you focus on, you get clients that matched it. And we took his practice from about 75 people a week to 275 people a week in a very short period of time, because all of a sudden now people go, you got to meet this, you got to see this guy in action. And they were starting to refer. And I said, you didn't have a style. It's not fun to watch. It's not even, they don't want to look at it. And so we made it where it was now finesse. So we made him really get present. And when you're really present, there's less effort on your part to get the adjustment. When you're extremely present, I always say, when you're grateful for what you're doing, you love what you're doing, you're inspired by the vision of what you're doing, you're enthusiastically working, you're certain about your skills, it's going on automatic, and you're present with the patient, it's impossible not to grow practice. It's not possible. It's automatically going to grow. But just getting people to train on that, finding out what their highest value is, finding out what their real mission for healing is, what their real reason for doing it, making sure that they're doing the highest priority things, making sure they're delegating lower priority things that weigh them down and distract them and frustrate them, and getting on to being the doc, and getting out there and sharing the message with people and adjusting people, and letting the rest of it be taken care of by professionals that take care of all the rest, and get out of your way.
One of the ways that I'm describing students' approach becoming a chiropractor is I broke a NATE up into their inner state, and state is an acronym for scientist, thinker, artist, teacher, entrepreneur. And I'm wondering if you could just use that as a framework to maybe describe how people can begin to visualize themselves becoming a better teacher or entrepreneur or artist through the context of becoming a chiropractor.
Well, those are great starting points. So the question is, are you feeding your mind every day with something new and inspiring that you want to share with your clients? If you don't have something going in that you can't wait to come out, you're not going to be enthused about presenting something to them. So what I found is I kept records of all the patients, and we made sure they didn't leave the office until they gave a testimonial and comment back. We didn't wait and here, take this and fill it up and maybe come back with it. We just didn't let them leave until they did that. And they wrote some amazing stories, and then we would share those stories. And sharing chiropractic stories with patients gives you an inspiration and gives them an inspiration. And those inspiration and enthusiastic energies increase the referrals. Absolutely. So we made that it. We also made sure that I was working on a skill daily. Every one of the doctors, we worked on at least one skill for at least 15 minutes a day, just one skill on adjusting, one skill on something we were doing and practicing, because otherwise you get sloppy. You just you get a little skill going. We then make sure that we had a referral sheet in every room, because if it's on a checklist, that you have a checklist every day, you go through a checklist of everything that's proven to work, and you look at, are you really living by the things that are proven to work? And then one of them was making sure that there were stimulating referrals. So when a patient was coming in and there was a great progress being made, we would sit down on the table and say, Mrs. Jones, it's been my experience that patients like yourself with your type of condition, in all probability, have tried to share their experience coming to the chiropractor with people they care about, their loved ones that's at work or at home or in their church or whatever, their synagogue. Is that true for you? And they would say, yes. Is there somebody you shared the message with that has come in here that I haven't thanked you for? No. It says, is there somebody that you've shared it with that you care about, that you feel that could benefit from chiropractic? Yes. So you believe that if they were to come in here, they would benefit? Yes. How can I help you help them? What can I do to help you help that individual? And what would it feel like to be able to make a difference in their life and help them? And then I would give them a series of things. Shall they come to my spinal care class? Should we go to dinner with them and meet them and have dinner together? Shall I come and do a class at your house and you invite them over? Shall I send them some information on their condition? Can we call them on the phone? Do you want them to come and visit? How can I help you help them? And I would go out of my way to try to help them help other people. I also had what I call the enchanted forest room. It was a room in my office where we had a name of every patient, and above it we had a one line for what I call a blade of grass. 3 to 5 lines was a little herb. 7 to 10 lines was a bush, and anything over 10 was a tree. And we had an enchanted forest. And anytime a patient came in there, we would log how many referrals they've given. and they would end up being a grass or they'd be an herb or whatever in their name, and it was alphabetically done. And we would basically show them, or not alphabetically, chronologically done. And we would then show them that, the majority of people here are referring between 3 and 10 people. It's about an average of about 7 people. But somehow we've done something that's offended you or not been, that you're not, what have we done that's made you not want to refer? And they go, no, doc, you did it. Oh, and they'd want to be on the enchanted forest. And then they'd start referring. So we had made it easy for them to refer. We made sure that their report of findings had their partner in care, whoever their partner in care was, their husband, their family, children, or best friend, or whatever. They always came to report of findings, so we engaged them, because we would tell them that if they don't bring somebody that's there, those people, if they don't understand what you're going through, may actually discourage you instead of encourage you. But if they understand what you're doing, it helps them, and then they would become patients. So we did all the things that helped them help other people, so they could have the fulfillment of watching lives change being in our office. And all these things assisted and will assist doctors. But also, we used to say to them, I said, you have 2 children. We get their names of their children. We get the names of their company. We get them, who is they're married, when's their anniversary is. We get data on them, their birthdays. We would sing to them. We would call them on their birthdays. We would engage them. I remember one time I was calling somebody on their birthday. They were at work, and there's about 8 or 9 people listening, and she says, it's my chiropractor. He's calling me and he's singing happy birthday to me. Really? Who's your chiropractor? And then they started thinking. 2 of those people came in within a week. So I did things that in a service orientation that would help people feel that they're, they've got somebody that's caring about them. Because if you care about them and make them your innermost dominant thought, they'll make your practice their innermost dominant thought, and they'll refer. So I just did whatever I could to be of service to people, and outreach and reach more people and talk to more people. I didn't go to bed until I met a minimum number of people every day. More people you meet and greet, the more you treat.
Mm-hmm. If we could center the voice on that high school or college student that is starting to consider themselves a pre-chiro student, a pre-chiropractic student, which is what we're trying to really expand in the world these days. I think that pre-med has made its position very strongly in the college communities and campus communities. There's a presence there, but there's really no presence of pre-chiropractic. I'm just curious, from your standpoint, what pre-chiropractic could do for college campuses to transform maybe the lifestyle choices of the students there. If we have pre-chiro students promoting chiropractic wellness living, ways to think well, teaching emotional intelligence, which I know is something that you've really been writing books on, and I saw that you're coming out with an audio book in this upcoming year. If you could maybe just describe how emotional intelligence could be shared by maybe a pre-chiro club to the fellow campus community, I think that would be really valuable.
Well, emotional intelligence is allowing the executive functioning of the brain to overrule the amygdala's subcortical impulses and instincts, and allowing you to think before you emotionally react instead of emotionally reacting before you think. And the adjustment, particularly the upper cervical adjustment, is unquestionably a piece of that emotional intelligence and the discipline of being around it. You cannot be around a chiropractor without probably having an impact on the way you live, the way you eat, your thinking process. There's more impact in chiropractic than simply the spine and the physical structure. I had a lady that came into my office when I first opened up my practice in 1982. She was 27 years old. She was on the front cover of Inc. magazine, and she was a #1 producer at this company in the financial industry. And she said, "Do you think you can help me? I'm in those days, you didn't have headsets. You just leaned on a telephone like that, and her neck was all gimped." And I helped her. And she actually increased her performance. Her closing rate went up. So she came into me and she said, "Is it possible that what you're doing is helping my closing rate?" I said, "Absolutely." So she started coming in multiple times a week just for closing rate increases, not for her physical symptoms, but because her performance went up. I saw that for the ballet patients that came in. I saw that for the sports, the Houston Astros that came in, the Rockets basketball people that came up. Almost anybody that was in performance, CEOs of companies, when they got adjusted, were performing. So I don't think that everybody knows that chiropractic and adjusting, it has an impact and a spillover to all areas. Your performance in your business, your performance in your economics, your performance in your relationship, every area, your social life. Because anytime you're having a checkup from the neck up and being in the presence of an adjustment, and not only in the presence of adjustment physically, but a presence of adjustment of a chiropractor who's committed and inspired and demonstrated through exemplification what's possible, that spillover effect is impacting that every area of their life. So if we measure all of those areas of life and the overall life impact, it's more than just my neck is now moving better. It's way more than that. And I'm not negating that as a physical thing, but I don't mean to not be objective about that. I just want to include the others. And so if we have a pre-chiropractic program in school and let them know the impact and the tears of gratitude you get getting to serve people on a daily basis without having to give them toxic materials with side effects, with basically inspiring them on how to live wisely, and eat wisely and function wisely, that's a very powerful thing. And have your autonomy. You're not working as an assistant for some doctor telling you what to do. You're the doc. You're the one in command, and you get to share a very valuable philosophy and ideas and practical things on how to live your life more wisely while you're doing the adjustment. So it's a combination of adjustment physically, but it's also the adjustment psychologically and philosophically. And all of those things, if students got that in school and got to realize that they get to own their own business, make a beautiful living, serve amazing number of clients, have your own office, work your own hours, and get testimonials that'll bring tears to your eyes on a regular basis, and be able to do that and not be governed by pharmaceutical company or an insurance company so much, but be dedicated to what you know and work with your heart, your hands, and your mind. That's pretty powerful. I think that can be shared. I think if chiropractors were inspired, if there was a thing I would recommend is in a university is to have an ongoing series of inspiring chiropractors that do extremely well to come and be guest speakers at a pre-chiropractic system that goes on in the university periodically.
Well, you know, as someone who's traveled around the world, that every culture is not as familiar with chiropractic as, say, the United States American culture with chiropractic. And so if a new school is propping up in a new country, for example, this year Scotland is creating a chiropractic school. Last year, I believe Brazil created a new chiropractic school. And I'm talking about more vitalistic chiropractic schools that focus on chiropractic. I'm curious, how do we contextualize the pathway? How do we contextualize the profession? And that's why having these conversations, I think, is so meaningful, because if we can reach people in different languages around the world, I think that inserting the profession of chiropractic into any culture based on what you just talked about is going to uplift the emotional, physical, spiritual, mental well-being of the population that it's able to touch and reach. So that's where I'm coming from. I'm curious, from your vantage point, which cultures around the world have you been able to observe and believe maybe are most primed for a profession like chiropractic to become more present, have more presence within their country? Because as you know, there's many countries where it doesn't exist.
Well, a chiropractor who's on fire, who's inspired by what they're doing, whatever country they go into, it's going to spread. It doesn't matter what country it is. I was in Tibet, and I was at the Jokan Temple, and right outside, and there were thousands of people walking around. And there was a dentist with little nuggets of mercury molding them and fitting them into cavities of these people. That was the dentist. And I thought, that's pretty primitive. And then there was a lady there that was standing there, was holding her neck. And I walked over to her, and I just felt her neck and spine. And I said, may I help you? And she didn't know what I think I even said. And I went and adjusted her, and her neck was looser. And I was very gentle with her. And so she was very grateful. And a couple of minutes later, she brought two people back. And so I started to adjust them. Well, then a line started developing, and we had, I think, around 275 people line up within about 8 to 10 minutes. I mean, it just took off. And finally, the security people there said, no, 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 I can't do this, can't do this, can't do this. So I said, okay, I can't do that here, but I can go down a little ways over here. And as long as I'm not in the temple area, I'm fine. So I walked over there, and all these people followed. So there was a natural yearning of curiosity of what you could do to help somebody there. So anybody that's inspired by what they do and loves what they're doing and is skillful at doing it will draw and magnetize people to grow it, no matter what country it's in. But I don't know. I think even in the developing countries, the people I know that are very inspired by what they do magnetize big practices. I worked with a guy in Quebec that was seeing over 1,000 people a week, and he was amazingly efficient, and he had his staff efficiently running things, and he was very present, and he prioritized what he was doing, and he was getting amazing results there. And there was no shortage of people. There's no shortage of chiropractic patients to a chiropractor who is inspired and clear and authentically delivering a quality adjustment.
I'm curious, as we segue to the end of this conversation, if you could maybe just touch on the different programs that you've developed that students may be interested in exploring for themselves, where your channels and resources are at, the books that you've written that you might feel are perfectly tailored or just relevant specifically for that population of chiropractic student or pre-chiropractic student. And then I'm also really curious if you could touch on just if we're establishing pre-chiropractic on a college campus and there's no chiropractors in the health centers and there's no chiropractors in the teaching staff or the administrative staff, like what that would mean to establish a presence of chiropractors in a college campus health center. Because I'm sure you've heard it at one point, the freshman 15, when people go to college, they're expecting to gain 15 pounds or add 15 unhealthy lifestyle behaviors to their daily or weekly lives. So I'm just curious if we could reframe that and add 15 positive lifestyle choices to the average college student's life and what that could maybe do for a college campus.
Well, Albert Einstein said it really nicely. The greatest teacher is exemplification. If a chiropractor is exemplifying an amazing life, when I told people for many years that one of the keys measurements of your achievement in chiropractic is not how much money you made. That's one, that's nice. But how many students went to chiropractic college because of it? I know I broke the 400 mark. 400 students went to chiropractic because of me speaking and lecturing and doing things and coming and visiting my office and stuff. So, how many people have you inspired to get into the profession? So the way to do it is to exemplify an exceptional contribution to the profession, have a quality clinic, have a quality life. If you're not living in a quality life, people aren't going to be drawn to you because they're going to want to expand their life. So if you're demonstrating a very high profile life, you're giving them a kind of a direction to go, if he can do it, I can do it. I remember one time I came to the Texas Chiropractic College. They asked me to speak at they had an annual gathering, I guess you could say a special day to engage people to become chiropractors. I don't remember the name of it, but anyway, they asked me to speak, and I was on the other side of town, and traffic would have been crazy, and I would have lost 3 hours in my practice, an hour and 20 minutes driving there, and another hour and 20 minutes during peak traffic, to almost 2 hours getting back. I didn't want to do that. It was not cost effective, so I hired a helicopter. So I got a helicopter that was literally about 2 miles from where my clinic was, and I flew there, and I landed there, and 40 new people joined the profession, because if a guy can be in practice for 2 years and have his own helicopter taken in places like that, that's how they perceived it. Now, all I did is just try to do it to make it more efficient for me, because it was going to be downtime otherwise, and I didn't want to fight traffic. But they perceived it that way, and they asked me to come back the following year and do something similar. So I brought in a film crew, which is part of my TV show that I had, and I said, we're going to film the show. You'll see it tonight on TV. Well, they got 19 that day signed up for chiropractic. They go, I want to live that. So you're demonstrating a life that they want, and you're demonstrating that it's possible to do that, doing something you love, with working with your hands, heart, and mind. So living an extraordinary life and doing something and giving yourself permission to do something extraordinary with your practice, I think automatically inspires new students to go to school. And then going to the school, if somebody coordinates it and has a special talk, I used to do talks outside at the University of Houston, outside under the trees. And I'd start there, and it started off with 10 people, 15 people, but it averaged about 120, 125, 150, up to 400 a day after a while. There's no reason why a person couldn't start doing something in a cafeteria or whatever and do presentations on a daily basis and inspire people to consider going to chiropractic college. It doesn't have to be elaborate. It doesn't have to be sophisticated. It just has to be something that's true, something that's sincere, and something exemplifying a high quality accomplishment.
And can you wrap us up by just kind of allowing people to gain insight into your life these days, what you're up to, where your passion is at, where your focus is at, and what your vision is for your for the future contributions you aim to make in humanity?
Well, today I teach, research, write, and travel. That's it. Everything else is delegated, period. So I live on my ship. I travel around the world. I'm nonstop traveling around the world. I get off sometimes to lecture, or I have lectures through Zooms and interactive meetings. Um, I just basically research, write, travel, teach today, and we reach about 250 million people a year now. So I just constantly out there outreaching and sharing messages with different industries and health, and still chiropractic. I'm not only in the chiropractic arena because I'm speaking to many different fields today, but I'm still working in the chiropractic arena and still helping chiropractors. So here we are again today. So I appreciate you having me on your show, because that allows me to do my contribution in the profession today.
My pleasure. Can you talk about some of the emerging research or where your focus is at in the literature? Any topics that you invite students to go on and discover for themselves, or go research for themselves?
Right now, I'm finishing up a book, probably tomorrow, the next day, I'll finishing up a book called The Essentials of Emotional Intelligence. That'll be published sometime in probably September. I'm also writing a textbook on neurology, because I love neurology, because I think that's the brain. It's on the brain. Just Demartini on the brain, it's called. And so I'm working on that. And I just constantly do podcasts. I do 350 to 400 podcasts a year. I do 320 to about 350 presentations a year. I have a very busy schedule, and I'm just going to keep researching, writing, traveling, and teaching. That's what I love doing, and speaking to chiropractors and other professionals.
Just to bring us into your life a little bit, some awareness that you can maybe shed on what are some of the journals that you're finding neurology articles, or that where are you doing your research, I guess I'm asking you, just so that we can help students get familiar with the different resources that are out there.
Well, if you just look up almost any topic on neurology, up comes hundreds and hundreds of articles. So it's nothing special, except I'm constantly looking at different articles, and they may come from many, many different journals. It's not one journal. I mean, it's if you go just start digging, up will come 50 or 60 different articles. Some will be legitimate and some won't, but you can decipher that and read it, and that stimulates new ideas. So I'm just basically researching and going online and just digging and digging and digging and digging, and taking a basic textbook on neurology and trying to get it the most update I can, and try to present something that will inspire students to want to appreciate it. I found some 2 or 3 things pretty interesting today. I found that the little peptide neurotransmitters that are normally D's or L's amino acids, they're usually L amino acids, peptides. They now find out that there's also D ones that are activated, and they do the opposite function in the brain. And now that's a whole new field that's emerging that wasn't even acknowledged when I was going to school. And also there's levels of the brain that they're now realizing, aspects of the brain of aphatic communication and entanglements going on in the brain, and biophoton systems there. That wasn't available in the 1980s, 1990s when I was there, 70s. So I'm constantly trying to keep up with what's going on at the most subtle level, and look at what stimuli is there, and how to empower the brain, both nutritionally, both physically, chiropractic, neurologically, physiologically, everything I can. How do we maximize the brain? That's the thing that makes us distinct. How do we master our brain?
I'm curious, lastly, if you could just give a capstone independent study project to a pre-Chiro student or a Chiro student, basically a prompt that can allow them to go and gain a lot of meaning out of dedicating themselves 3 to 6 months to a specific project that is aligned with their focus, their vision, their values.
Go research the significance of subtle homeostatic feedback reflexes, negative feedback reflexes in the body, and go to study interoceptive and exteroceptive reflexes in the body and how it is what we used to call innate intelligence originally in the green books by BJ. The science of the innate intelligence is real. So go and study that field of how the brain knows how to homeostat. That we have a feedback that if all of a sudden our neurochemistry goes in one direction based on perceptions, that there's a counterbalancing mechanism to bring homeostasis back that's simultaneously occurring, just like a thermostat. If you get hot, you sweat, and if you get cold, you shiver. Well, if you have certain transmitters that go up and they become super excited or facilitated, there's inhibitory systems that are trying to bring it back into homeostasis. What we call innate intelligence is a real thing, and the educated intelligence is all the moral hypocrisies that we're subordinating to about what we've been taught that isn't so. Paul Dirac, the Nobel Prize winner, said that it's not that we don't know so much, we know so much that isn't so. We're bombarded by false misinformation and ideologies by ideologues that are not so. And so having to filter that out, and The Wisdom of the Body by Walter Cannon is a great book in 1963. It's a fantastic book on the wisdom of the body, on making sure that we really get to appreciate how the body takes the stimulus and uses it to its greatest potential. Study that so you can appreciate what power you have in an adjustment. Study that. That's a worthy thing. Interoceptive, homeostatic, negative feedback loop systems on neurotransmitters, on neuroelectronics, and neurochemistry. And you'll appreciate what we actually had in the original philosophical view of chiropractic.
And then lastly, just to ask somebody to really get clear on their path in life, who are chiropractors? What should somebody be asking themselves when they're thinking and pondering to themselves, do I want to become a chiropractor? I'm curious, how is that unique or different, or how? I know that a lot of this conversation is all about that, but just to sum it all up in a nutshell before we get off here.
Well, look at what your life demonstrates. Your hierarchy of values is revealed through what your life demonstrates. Every decision you make, every perception you take, every action you take is based on what your values are. Look at what your life is demonstrating that you spontaneously do, that you love doing, and look at how it relates to what you could contribute in the chiropractic field. Then go and visit some chiropractors. But don't go to people, go to the doctors that are really viable, that are very inspired, that have a beautiful practice, that are inspired, because you got different doctors in a bell curve. You got different ones that are extreme, that are radically overkill, and you might say underkill. Find somebody that's really doing it great, is a great image of a chiropractor, because in every profession you have the extremes. But go and find a quality chiropractor and go hang out with them and just say, look, I'm considering chiropractic. I'd like to just see what goes on in a daily practice, and get one that's busy, so that you can see what's going on and see the results and see what's happening and see all the patients and talk to the patients. Go do that and see if that doesn't inspire you to want to be in the field.
Thank you so much for taking some time with us, Dr. Demartini. Is there any last words that you'd like to share before we get off here?
Yeah, give yourself permission to create the chiropractic practice of your dreams. Don't subordinate to anyone. Find out what's inside your heart, how you want to create it. Learn from everyone, but don't subordinate to anyone. Don't try to be second to being somebody else. Be first to being you. The magnificence of who you are as a chiropractor is far greater than any fantasies you'll impose on yourself. Don't compare yourself to others. Compare your daily actions to what you value most in what you want to contribute. And get really clear on the vision you hold. Start writing it out and visualizing what it is so you get clearer. Those with a vision flourish. Those without a vision perish. And the ones who have the ever finer detail in their vision are the ones that don't run into the obstacles. Any detail you leave out of your vision is an obstacle you face along the journey. Clear the obstacles by clarifying the vision and going after the vision from your heart. and go out and make a difference. When you have a big enough reason to go out and do it, a big enough why for doing things, the hows will take care of themselves. You won't have a problem. If you really care about patients and they really want to serve people, your practice will provide you with amazing life.
Thank you so much.